As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We're very excited to have a special returning guest today. Rob Kirby, founder of KirbyAnalytics.com, is here with us again on Reluctant Preppers. Rob is a renowned commentator on the global financial markets and specifically with awareness towards precious metals. Rob, thank you for joining us again here on Reluctant Preppers.
Pleasure to be with you again, Dunnigan.
We've got a raft of questions that have been submitted by our viewers, and we will not be able to get through even half of them, but I will try to pick out a few and see if we can get your take on them. So the first one is kind of interesting right off the bat. It's submitted by Without Excuse 2011. The question is, if you were given 30 seconds in front of President Trump, what advice would you give him?
My advice would be, if he could, to come clean about the activity of the Exchange Stabilization Fund, and hopefully to bring some transparency to that aspect of the U.S. Treasury, because I think this is what's killing us. And this is what I think is defaming and defacing all of our capital markets, making them all a cesspool. So that's the thing I would put to him first and foremost.
Got another one for you. This is on a general action of the bond market relative to the interest rate. This is from Advar Stellarno, and he asks, how is the bond market in general influenced by the key interest rate? Does the central bank set short-term rates only? And if so, what determines long-term rates?
There is no such thing as a bond market, just like there is no such thing as a real precious metals market. They are contrivances that are determined in back rooms. What we see as price discovery on the COMEX and on the LBMA are artificial constructs. What we see express itself in our bond markets today are artificial constructs as well. It's very interesting that this question would come up, because I've just written a very, very long treatise, which I'm going to be doing a special report with Catherine Fitz in the coming days. And it deals with interest rate derivatives. Interest rates at both the long and short end of the curve are determined by generous applications of interest rate derivatives. It's my contention that the Exchange Stabilization Fund and or the U.S. Treasury is responsible for U.S. monetary policy, not the Federal Reserve, as most people commonly think. With hideous application of derivatives, which we have seen from time to time throughout the years, the powers that be have the ability to make longer and or short-term rates whatever they want, whenever they want to. And if we see rates backing up, it's because they've chosen to have them back up, not because the markets have driven them up.
We've got another one about silver and JP Morgan. Actually, there's a couple of them in here about JP Morgan and silver. Two of them are asking, is JP Morgan amassing or warehousing? Are they hoarding silver, warehousing silver? And then the second one, which follow up, says, if JP Morgan keeps manufacturing these silver future contracts to smash the price of physical, who keeps buying them and why? The whole issue with J.P. Morgan and silver, it's to me it's sort of interesting when you think back years ago. It was I'm trying to remember. I've got a brain cramp right now. But the girl who used to run the derivatives for J.P. Morgan, who many people have lampooned in the alternative press. If you can help me out there, Donovan, if you remember. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank as well.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
she was the one who said that we're not doing these transactions for ourselves. We're doing them on behalf of clients who want a hedge. That's what they were saying. Yeah.
Well, their client.
Yep.
In the case of J.P. Morgan and silver, I would maintain that their client is the U.S. government, and it's the U.S. government, and I would argue specifically the Exchange Stabilization Fund that has their hand at work in the precious metals market, suppressing prices. And would it surprise me if J.P. Morgan knowing that the government is suppressing the price of paper precious metals, might be taking a position for their own account in physical precious metal, knowing that a long-term program to suppress the price of paper ultimately will end in failure, and they may very well be hedging themselves, buying physical precious metal on their own account, waiting for the day when paper fails. So it wouldn't shock me at all.
Since we're one day away from the March 15th debt ceiling date, a lot of people ask questions around that. And one question from Tiger's Age 3113 MDC says, Rob, what is your take on whether or not the plunge protection team will use the March 15th debt ceiling as an excuse to crash the financial markets? Or do you think that the bond bubble has reached such astronomical levels that even the plunge protection team cannot manipulate this market any longer, especially since commercial real estate and thus REITs are imploding as consumer spending is grinding to a halt, and so on? Well,
I would say that as long as the derivatives market is alive and well, which to the best of my knowledge it still is, the powers that be in America have the ability to keep interest rates wherever they want. Long and short-term rates can be literally nailed to the floor. They can be reduced, or they can let them go up. And it depends on what their cause du jour happens to be. And if the powers that be are really trying to pull something on Trump to make him look bad, to thwart his agenda, I would say that they could allow some pretty unruly things to occur in our capital markets. But I mean, to me, our capital markets demonstrate that they're all under severe suppression and or direction. And frankly, the only thing in my paradigm that I see that trades anything remotely close to being a free market happens to be Bitcoin, which I'm reluctant to give a wholehearted approval to, because I happen to believe in things known as or colloquially called an internet kill switch. And I wonder what happens to your worth if you have it invested in something completely digital. What happens if they turn the internet off? And for that reason alone, I just can't wholly endorse Bitcoin and or cryptocurrencies. But I will admit they actually do appear to be trading as a free market should.
I think you had mentioned that in a previous interview here. You had mentioned that the things you should be able to trust is just the physical, gold and silver markets. You can't even find an honest market in physical gold and silver, like the COMEX, not being representative at all of actual physical settlements. And then on the flip side of the coin, it's the virtual, Bitcoin that seems to be trading the way you would expect something to honestly trade.
Yeah, intuitively, Dunnigan, that seems paradoxical to me.
Yeah.
But that's how upside down our world is.
This one gets back. You mentioned the Exchange Stabilization Fund earlier, and that may be part of your answer to this one. It says, as the stock market shoots up, GDP has been flat for years. Companies' profits generally flat, with honest accounting profits down. So where did the $3 trillion come from to pump up the stock markets in the last 4 months? Was this $3 trillion instantly created, or are they creating this new money using a Ponzi loan bank-to-bank scheme with 0% interest? ...
Well, I would answer that by saying if you inject opium into your veins, you might see the world a little bit differently than the rest of the people who aren't on the drug. And in the case of what's occurred in our markets since the election, I would point out to people that the first reaction to the surprise Trump win was for the equity markets to sewer. But we had the plunge protection team show up for work late that evening, and they reversed a massive sewering or down in equities into a very, very massive up the next day. And you know what? We've seen since then. I think we've been living off injections of hopium, and as opposed to opium. And when people get injected with a whole lot of hopium, it's really, really funny what can happen in markets. I think our markets are dystopic right now, and they make very little sense and have very little to do with reality.
This is another one that you can tell comes from a real person's real personal concern. Once the bond market blows up, what's going to happen to life insurance policies, particularly permanent life insurance policies, which has a cash value built into them that the policyholder can draw on from to supplement their retirement income?
Well, I don't think it takes anyone too brilliant to figure out what's going to happen to such an investment if we happen to hyperinflate. If we hyperinflate, anything that's got a fixed amount of at maturity stands to basically become irrelevant. It's the people that are facing the same dilemma, in my view, anyway, are people that are closely tied to the pension system, or people that have defined depending on how your pension is worded. If you've got a defined benefit plan, you're going to get your benefit, or you should get your benefit, regardless of what happens to cost. But people who have defined contribution plans, where they basically get out of the system whatever the system, however much fruit the system can bear at the time you begin to draw, they'll be in the same boat as people who have, fixed in nominal terms returns at a future date. Anyway, I don't envy anybody who'd be in that position. And in my view towards owning insurance, frankly, is that I wouldn't favor owning whole insurance. I think term insurance works very well.
And with term, at least you're not expecting that there's going to be this asset that's denominated in fiat currency that some counterparty is going to owe you in terms of a collapse or whatever. You're just, as long as the system's holding together, you've got your current protection and you're paying for it as you go. If we could turn our attention back, you mentioned Trump earlier. These next two questions involve the Trump administration. What's the most likely course, in your view, of the battle between the factions of the deep state versus the Trump interlopers?
That's a really good question, and I really wish I knew the answer to it. My gut tells me that we're going to see something very dramatic occur in the not too distant future. Either Trump's going to be taken out, or the deep state's effectively going to be crippled. And I think the likely way that the deep state will get crippled, if it happens, is going to be with the explosion onto the mainstream of the full guts and glory of this pedogate issue, which I think Trump has been reluctant to release in its full bore up till now, because I think it's basically a nuclear option, and I think it could create significant damage to the state. But in the meantime, if the erratic behavior continues from both sides of the aisle towards Trump and his agenda, I think he could get himself into a corner where that's basically the only option he feels he has left in the bag. So I think one or the other is going to be damaged significantly in the very near future.
Related question is, if Trump is commander-in-chief, why does it seem that large portions of the government are operating outside of his control? For example, the military is currently setting up shop in Syria without invitation. Why the military is setting up shop in Syria right now, I can't really explain it. It seems to me that it's in direct contradiction to what Trump said in his State of the Union, which was so well received, that America would respect other countries and their aspirations and would not be looking to run interference. So it could be that there's splintering within the Trump team. But I mean, this has made me raise my eyebrows quite a bit. And it's not something that I really expected Trump to be doing this early on anyway. Turning our attention back to the precious metals markets, this one kind of takes aim at what's going on with the COMEX. What really prevents someone from taking physical delivery on the COMEX? Why can't or why don't investors like Sprott just buy it all up? Where's the Hunt brothers when you need them?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the Hunt brothers, because my answer was going to be the Hunt brothers. The Hunt brothers tried to do just that, and the Hunt brothers had the full weight and force of the establishment come down on them and effectively ruin them financially. So the reason why Sprott wouldn't be in a hurry to do such a thing is he'd probably find that his company, Sprott Asset Management, would probably be under investigation or be under audit, and probably would have regulatory issues coming out the wazoo. And it's quite a powerful elixir when people, let's just say, I know people in the investment industry who've been talking big game about fraud in the system and and being big advocates of precious metal, and not very nice things have happened to them. And this is in the last 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
So there are examples. Believe me, there are examples of people who've tried to take on the system, and they get their knuckles wrapped pretty badly.
This is a different aspect of the system and how it might function. People have talked about, why does it matter how much we go in debt? So this question addresses that. Can you please address the hazard specifically of who is going to hold us responsible for our $20 trillion in debt?
In a word, foreigners. I mean, like America has a perpetual balance of trade deficit with the rest of the world. America prints money for a living, and the rest of the world has to work for a living. And America, I guess people are used to consuming, and a lot of American financial elites claim, at least I believe erroneously, that America's job in the world is to consume. Well, consuming, when you're paying people in currency that's backed by nothing, works for so long. And if you want to pay attention to what's really happening in the world, we see America's 3 biggest traditional financiers, specifically China, Japan, and Saudi Arabia, have been not only unwilling to continue picking up their share of new American debt, they've actually been paring back what they've been holding. So it's sort of like, why should I care if I live on my Visa card if Visa's cutting my limit? Well, you really should be concerned, because if your only means of survival and putting food on your table is by Visa's generosity, when Visa starts to reduce the generosity, you got a big concern. And I think America has big concerns going forward.
This one brings it back home again to the individual and for all of us. It says, "Hi, Rob. Thanks for your info and your insights. Using a doomsday clock analogy, in your opinion, how many minutes close to midnight do you think we are, or will it be more of a slow burn to our society and economy in Canada and in the USA?"
I think we're so close to midnight. I think the next tick of the clock is going to be midnight. So the thing is, I can't tell you when that next tick is going to be. But rest assured, I believe it is coming, because I believe that the path that we're on is not sustainable forever. It just isn't. And it's amazing the rabbits that have been pulled out of hats to keep us from having that last tick to midnight to date. But I don't believe it's something that can be maintained indefinitely. It defies logic that this can go on forever.
Back to the topic of sort of the debt coming due that we were addressing in a previous question. This viewer asks, what happens to personal debt? Some YouTubers talk about debtors' prisons.
Well, debtors' prisons, in my view, are a possibility. There's a lot of people who believe that if we get a hyperinflation, that their real estate will hyperinflate and they will ultimately be able to pay off their mortgage debt in depreciated dollars. I would just tell people to consider what happened in Germany during the Weimar inflation. People who had big mortgages who I think would have had dreams of paying their mortgages off in depreciated Weimar dollars or Weimar Reichsmarks, found that the bankers changed the rules and their mortgages were very quickly pegged to the price of gold. And I would imagine if we hyperinflate here, the bankers will change the rules and will put themselves first in line, because we all know when the financial ship hits the iceberg, it's bankers and then whoever's left over first. But bankers to the lifeboats first.
And this one's talking about land as a possible asset to hold in the case of a collapse. What are your thoughts on wealth transfer regarding land? It seems that there were great transfers from people to oligarchs in hyperinflation and depressions of the post-Civil War, southern U.S., Weimar Germany, and the 1930s Great Depression. Do you know of other examples where there was a concentration of land into wealthy oligarchs happened historically? And is this part of their plan during an economic collapse? What duration of economic hard times do you foresee over which land and asset ownership transfer would occur?
Well, I like land, and I actually like real estate if you own it for your like as a principal residence. But that being said, I think people should try to avoid debt at all costs. So if you're going to be over leveraged or extremely leveraged to own real estate, I think you might be better off if you rent. And if you're going to own property outside of a principal residence, I think it would be likely the most intelligent thing to own would be agricultural producing, like something where you can go and grow food, because I think that will always have value. It's got intrinsic value. But anyway, my real point there is try to avoid debt to the best of your ability to do so.
Right. And this is about how we come out of a financial collapse. When the monetary system finally corrects and the true value of commodities and currencies are discovered, how long will it take to normalize? Will there be buying opportunities of real property immediately after the correction? What are the possibilities of transactions being made with precious metals? Thanks very much for your insight and honesty about the state of the current world monetary system.
Well, let's just say when the system does go down, which I believe it will, commerce will not stop. We may be forced back to some description of barter for a period of time, and in a world where barter becomes the primary means of conducting commerce, I think at the top of the list of barterable goods will be physical precious metal, and I feel that somewhere down the road that's going to be in play, and that's not to say that physical precious metal is the only tangible you can have. Look, owning storable food is also a very, very wise thing to do. Food will always have value if it's storable and if it's consumable. That will always have value, as will things that people need, whether it's toilet paper or whether it's fine wine or a bottle of booze. These things are all tangibles that people will always desire. And in the case of booze, they might even want more of it if things go on the rocks.
Yeah, actually, that's a good pun. Actually, booze. When you look at lists of storable goods and barter goods, it's remarkable. I was just kind of reflecting on this years ago about it's hard to name one that has more properties. First of all, it has infinite shelf life. Second of all, it has so many uses, all the way from beverage to entertainment to potential fuel, potential source of heat in a pinch, to solvent. It's just anesthesia, something that could clean wounds if you need to. I mean, you go on and on. Yeah. It's a very versatile commodity.
Yeah, but the problem, Donegan, is it tends to disappear in my house a little too much.
Well, you have to rotate your stock. You can always say that's on purpose. This one is, again, related to a difference between physical and paper silver markets. Will there be any warning or price level indication as to when the paper silver market may implode or collapse? I had purchased some paper silver from RBC at considerably higher prices and was waiting to get back to my cost base. Would it be advised to cash them in now, take the loss, and purchase the physical, adding to my stacking campaign, which I should have done initially? So getting out of paper and into physical is the question.
I'm just extremely reluctant to ever own paper calls on metal. My feeling is that the day you really require it, it may or may not be there, and you may end up getting settled in cash. And that to me would be the worst thing that could possibly happen to you, to have made the right call to in terms of thinking to own metal. And you own paper calls on metal, and then we get a reset, or we get a major disruption in the market, and then we have institutions saying we're declaring force majeure because we can't source the metal, and we're just gonna arbitrarily pay you out at X price, and you end up getting a bag of fiat money, which will never replace what you thought you had. So my view is do not hold paper, period.
And circling back, I had to give you this one because this is from a Canadian. Please ask Rob what he thinks Canadians should do with regard to their mortgage, silver, etc., and any and all preps. Does he see a timeline coming into focus with the current rate and types of events unfolding? My husband thinks Canada will be the first country to become a cashless society. Do you concur?
Canada may become the first country to become a cashless society because a lot of people in Canada have shied away from using cash, as in bills in their wallet already, and we seem to be very in Canada. We seem to be very adept at using our bank cards, so we're largely cashless now, or a lot of people are. But frankly, with me living in Toronto, I feel that the real estate market is severely overcooked in Toronto. I think it's severely overcooked still in Vancouver. And all I can say to people who've owned and done well in real estate in Canada, God help you if interest rates ever go up, because I think our market is ripe for a slaughter on the real estate front in Canada. And even though it's been the place to be for a very long time now, I think you're pushing your luck if you think that this is going to continue indefinitely. That's my view.
This is one about your opinion of a safe jurisdiction to be in the case of a collapse. I would love to ask, where should one live when, I'll just say in the case of a collapse. I am somebody's considering between a little farm in Eastern Europe, where he currently lives, and a place in Latin America. The first one would be with precious metals on hand, my own veggies, partly cold weather, maybe a center of an upcoming war. But the other would be war-free and warmer, but without precious metals on hand.
Well, gee, when it comes to storage of precious metals, I've had this discussion with a client in the very, very recent past. And they posed to me, where would you prefer to store metal if you had a large cache of metal? And the names that were put forward to me were, would you put it in Hong Kong? Would you put it in Switzerland? Or would you put it in Singapore? And my answer to him was none of the above. I would keep it in Toronto, Canada. And the reason I like Canada as a jurisdiction to hold metal is that we have no history of confiscation in this country. And I would remind people that during the Second World War, when countries in Europe were afraid of being overrun by Nazis and Hitler's Third Reich, most countries in Europe chose Canada for safekeeping of their metal, not America or the Federal Reserve. And the reason for doing so, Canada has geography working for it, and politically we are and have been a very stable country, and we have good traditions in terms of respecting property rights and the right of owners of physical goods. So that's my view on it. And everybody's welcome to have their own view. That's mine, and I'm sticking to it until I have a reason to think otherwise.
Well, here's a question that's related, and it may be able to give you a little bit more opportunity to give some round out on this. It says, "Hello, Rob. Presently, the Canadian government charges 50% on precious metals capital gains." Don't know if that's true. That's just what the viewer put in there. "How will we best realize any gains in silver and gold when this sort of taxation is already legislated? We are being penalized for our foresight."
Well, you know what? The reality is gains on physical precious metal in Canada are taxable. So if you make gains, you're going to be subject to some tax. That's the cost of living in a country that has respect for civil liberties and respect for property rights. You can always take a crap. You can go move to an unoccupied island somewhere in the Caribbean and hope nobody shows up, and takes everything you own, including your own. I mean, at the end of the day, everybody can choose where they want to live. Frankly, I like the country I'm in. I like our laws, and I like the way people are treated, and that comes at a cost. And if you got to pay tax, I don't know a jurisdiction where we can escape capital gains tax completely unless you want to go live in a banana republic. But if you live in a banana republic, maybe you escape capital gains tax for a while or for a period. But if the government in the banana republic comes under financial trouble, maybe you lose the whole lot. So, you pay your money, you take your chances.
Next one is a pretty easy one. Maybe it's not. It says, "Do you recommend investing in platinum at all?"
Boy, platinum is not a monetary metal, but platinum is rare. So if you are going to have X dollars invested in precious metal, if you have 5% of X in platinum, it probably wouldn't hurt you. But I wouldn't be an advocate of having a major core position in platinum at all.
And last question: how will these highly leveraged brokerage houses survive a stock market plunge? Will my metal stocks be worth a darn?
That's a very good question, and and in all honesty, I don't know the answer to that. But all that being said, I won't have to worry about it because I don't own any stocks. And I don't own any stocks for the simple reason that I don't have a good answer to that question. So I avoid it altogether.
The final viewer comment, I held this for last. "Tell Rob I hold him in the highest esteem and he is my favorite Canadian."
Well, that's very kind of anybody to make such a statement. I hope I can live up to it.
Well, Rob, before we let you go, could you tell people how they can find out more of your work and any final thoughts that you have based on all of the discussion that we've had today?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think we're headed into some very unprecedented times in the very, very near future. And I hope everybody keeps a very clear head, and I hope people keep their emotions in check. Because I think what we're about to see here in the very near future is going to be difficult for a lot of people, and I wish everyone the best. And I hope people have taken basic steps to do some basic smart things to protect themselves. Own some hard assets. I put precious metal at the top of the list of hard assets. Own some storable food if you have the ability to do it and store it. And, you might want to think about having a way to protect it all if you haven't done so already.
And if people want to find out more about your work?
You can catch me on the web at kirbyanalytics.com.
Rob, thank you once again, and as always, for joining us here and giving us your insights and perspective on Reluctant Preppers.
My pleasure, Dunnigan.